Today, we're diving into a really powerful essay that tries to make sense of a particular kind of authority at work in American life. It uses policing as a lens to understand how a simple, everyday encounter can spiral into tragedy. And it all kicks off with this single, unforgettable image. The whole thing starts with this one line. It's designed to pull you in, to set a scene that's incredibly difficult to look at, but even harder to look away from. It's an image that basically creates a mystery that we just have to get to the bottom of. So we're asked to be a witness to a scene that just feels profoundly wrong on every level. By making us look, it really frames the central question of this whole analysis. What on earth allows something like this to happen? So picture this. A man has been shot and is bleeding out in the street, but the officer who shot him doesn't run over to help. Instead, he just walks slowly around the body, almost like it's an object, just an obstacle in the road. There's no urgency, no aid given. The man dies right there. And the really gut-wrenching part is that we learn later that basic first aid probably could have saved his life. The initial violence is a tragedy, but it's the calmness that follows that is so deeply, deeply unsettling. And this, right here, is the question that sits at the very heart of this entire piece. What kind of system, what theory of authority, what set of beliefs makes this response not just possible, but somehow acceptable within its own internal logic? That is what we are here to unpack. Now, the easy answer, the one we often reach for, is to just blame the individual, to say, oh, this was a cruel officer, or he was poorly trained, the whole bad apple argument. But the essay argues that this explanation, it just doesn't really work when you zoom out and look at the bigger picture. I mean, when you start seeing the same patterns over and over again, these minor incidents that explode, and then the institutions defending the outcome, you have to start wondering. Maybe you're not seeing a bunch of random mistakes. Maybe what you're seeing is the logical result of the system itself. It suggests we need to stop looking at the individual parts and start looking at the actual design of the machine. Okay, so here is the absolute crux of the argument. The essay proposes that this design, this machine, is built on a very specific theory of authority. And to really get it, we need to put it side by side with a totally different model. This slide really lays it all out. These are two fundamentally opposed ways of thinking about this. On the left, you've got the British model, policing by consent. The idea here is that authority is something the public gives to the police. That makes it super fragile. It has to be earned and re-earned constantly. Then, on the right, you've got the American command and control model. This view says authority is just baked into the state itself. And in this world, it's actually the citizen's job to prove that they are worthy of the state's protection. It completely flips the whole relationship on its head. So let's just break down that first one a little more. Policing by consent means your legitimacy is always on the line. Every single action, but especially any use of force, has to be justified to the public. Why? Because the public is where your power comes from in the first place. The command and control model? It does a complete 180. Here, the state's authority is just a given. It's not up for debate. The real question is about you, the citizen. Your compliance isn't just about following an order. It becomes a test of your character. It's a live demonstration of whether you deserve protection or if you're actually a threat that needs to be controlled. And that idea right there, compliance as a test, that is the key that unlocks everything that follows. It's not just about getting people to do what you say. It becomes a tool, a mechanism for sorting people instantly into one of two boxes. You're either innocent or you're dangerous. This quote just nails it. In this system, the command to comply carries this enormous, almost sacred weight. It's the moment the whole encounter pivots. How you respond in that instant determines everything, how you're seen, and ultimately how you're treated. And this slide shows that danger sequence perfectly. Look how it works. It starts with something small, right? A broken taillight, forgetting a turn signal. But then, if the person questions the officer or even just hesitates for a second, the entire mission changes. The traffic ticket, totally forgotten. The new goal, the only goal, is to establish absolute control. And in that moment, the whole idea of a proportional response can just completely evaporate. So what does this look like on the ground? Well, the gun is always there, not just as a tool, but as this constant symbol of the state's ultimate final power. The training often emphasizes officer safety and dominance above all else, and that includes rendering medical aid. The idea is always secure the scene first, provide care later. But in the heat of the moment, with adrenaline pumping, later can so easily become never. And that brings us right back to that man bleeding in the road. Okay, so we've talked about the abstract logic. Now let's look at how this produces just devastatingly real consequences through two very well-known and very tragic cases. First, let's consider the killing of Tamir Rice. I mean, just look at this timeline. It shows the absolutely staggering speed of what happened. A police car pulls up, and in less than 2 seconds, a 12-year-old boy is shot. Then, for 4 agonizing minutes as he's lying there dying, no medical aid is given by the officers. The system operated at the speed of its worst possible assumption. It was threat first, assessment second, or really not at all. The second case is Sandra Bland, and the whole thing begins with this absolutely chilling threat from the officer during a simple traffic stop. This encounter shows that the logic of command and control doesn't even need a bullet to be lethal. Sandra Bland was in her own car, and she legally declined to put out her cigarette. In this system, that was seen as an intolerable challenge to authority. The situation exploded, she was arrested, and 3 days later, she was found dead in her cell. Her case just makes it painfully clear. In this system, submission is treated as the price you have to pay for your dignity, and even for your safety. So, where does race fit into all of this? Well, the essay makes a really crucial distinction here. It argues that racial bias is the thing that determines who gets exposed to this logic most often, who gets stopped, questioned, and challenged in the first place, and with the most aggression. But, and this is key, once that encounter starts, the logic of the system itself just takes over. It's designed to prioritize compliance and control, and that design is what drives the outcome, no matter who gets caught up in it. The essay argues that understanding this structure helps explain why racial injustice can be so tragically persistent. And that brings us full circle, right back to where we started, with that body in the road and the really tough question it forces all of us to confront about the world we've made. This is the final, chilling piece of the puzzle. This American model of authority is defined by its certainty. It's absolutely certain that obedience is required, that control is the top priority. And it's this moral certainty that allows an officer to walk away from a dying man and still believe, on some level, that he did his job correctly. The threat was stopped, the moral books are balanced, account closed. So we end with the essay's final haunting question, which is really a question for all of us. That body in the road isn't just a sad story. It's a question staring back at us, and we really shouldn't pretend it isn't asking us something incredibly profound about the society we've built.